Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I could have your attention, please. I'd like to have you stand and recite the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone to the August 26, 2008 meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. I'm filling in this morning for Chairman Walensky, who is, with somewhat mixed emotions, depositing his daughter to her first year of college up in Oregon. So, anyway, I'd like to see if there are any announcements this morning.
Mr. Chairman, this is notice that the Community Development Agency has requested that item 12A, which was added to the agenda by addendum, be rescheduled and brought back to the board on September 9th. That was the board's discussion of general plan update. Follow up to the meeting we had at the high school.
Okay, so we'll have no discussion on that. It'll be rescheduled. Everybody understand that the issue, item 12A, is going to be rescheduled to September the 9th. Okay, going on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon by the board without discussion. If any member of the board, staff member, or interested party can remove an item from the consent calendar, and we'll discuss it individually. So at this time, do I have a motion?
No, I want to remove 2 items.
Okay, you want to remove 2 items, and which ones are those?
I want to remove item 1, the minutes. They're not ready yet. They will be ready on next week's agenda. Madeline, thank you. I'd like to move item 5, a resolution for support of Sierra Nevada Conservancy. It will not be a resolution. It will be a possible letter of support if they can find somebody to carry the grant. At this point, they do not have anyone available to carry the grant, so I'm just moving that out 1 week.
Okay, so we are not going to be acting on 1 and 5.
Correct.
Anybody have any comments on the other? Yes?
I'd like to pull 4.
Okay,
pull
like
item
to pull
4.
Okay. Okay, so we're pulling item 4 for discussion. On the other items, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for approval of all items with the exception of 1, 2, and 4. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried.
1, 2, and 4.
1 and 5 are pulled. The 2, I want to correct myself. 2 is only in correspondence. So do we have some comments on item 4?
My name is Diane Keene. I live in San Andreas here. Some people that know me know I'm really big on policies and procedures. The resolution that's in front of you is, or rather, normally they said that the approval is through various committees, environmental, CAO, county council, and this resolution is to bypass the procedures that you have already set up. I don't, at this stage of the game, with the county growing the way it is, I think it's critical that the policies and procedures that have been set up, that also form a sort of checks and balances, that they be followed to the T, not 98% of the time, not 97 or whatever. I don't know why this is on here. I don't think it's a good precedent starting item for a particular department of the county to sit there and say, well, we don't want to follow the policies and procedures that are set up. And in a sense, that's sort of what you're doing, even though it might only apply to a couple of their contracts. The other thing that comes to my mind is if the county has set up policies and procedures on how things are approved, and let's suppose, I don't know, something comes up and county council knows about something but hasn't got time to disseminate it to the other departments, but if they know the policies and procedures on approval of different contracts is followed to the T, except maybe, let's say, an emergency, and something comes through, then they'll go, oh, well, I didn't get a chance to tell the other department, and no, there's something in this document that doesn't fit. So it seems to me like it's sort of critical that you not approve this resolution and go back, bounce it back to square one and make the department follow the policy and procedures that you set up. It's critical. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, our county code requires that contracts come through my office for approval, and I don't think this would change that. This should not change that procedure.
Okay, did you understand that, Ms. Keene? The county council has said that the county code requires that all contracts come through their office for review.
Yeah, but this resolution is to have you not see the contract.
No.
No,
It's,
no, it's not.
Mary,
Mary Mutz, Agricultural Commissioner. Hopefully for some clarification, I am requesting to enter into contracts so that I can sign these contracts. They are for revenue-generating contracts only, not for any work to be done from an outside bidder, just for revenue-generating contracts. Some of the contracts are very routine, such as our inspections for performing organic inspections of organic growers, in which the contract is for approximately $500 of revenue, and our nursery inspection contract, approximately $500 in revenue. These contracts are so small in revenue, it seems it's efficient for the county to authorize the Ag Commissioner to sign on the line, to enter into these contracts, whereas it requires approval from at least 4 other entities. And this is not setting precedent, at least not within the agency. The Environmental Health Department for years has been authorized to enter into routine contracts.
If I understand correctly, Mr. Jones, these contracts as well continue to go through the Office of County Counsel for analysis and approval.
Yes, they do. The resolution doesn't change that. I see the cover memo does certainly suggest that they would not come through my office, but I think that would require some further board action.
Okay.
thank you, Mary. Any other board members wishing to make a comment on this?
So move this item.
Second.
Okay, moved and second for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. I also agreed with that. It's a 5-0. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I can't even count this morning. It's 4-0-1 absent. Okay, at this time, we'll go to the public comment portion of the agenda. Any persons in the audience wishing to come and make comments to the Board of Directors or Board of Supervisors on items that are not on the agenda? I'll be restricting comments hopefully to 5 minutes and 15 minutes per topic. So please come identify yourself and let's hear what you have to say this morning.
Good morning. My name is Nick Tully. I have my name down here. I am back here again. I live on Lake Tulloch, as you know. I have had a miserable summer with the short-term renters are on me. I know some people at the county level are working on this maybe to help us out and have some kind of sensible solution to this problem. I appreciate that. And also, I want to report to you that last weekend before last, I had 3 phone calls to Sheriff Department. One phone call was at 11:30, and they told me that because of the noise that was going next door, and they said that there is no noise thing here on the lake, and they cannot do anything about it. Nobody showed up. Then on the following day, I called the sheriff twice, because the same house, they had an offshore racing boat revving up the engine to a point that the houses were shaking. I called the sheriff twice, and the excuse was that there was a drowning at Lake Comanche or someplace, so everybody is there. Person is dead. Look after us. Anyway, nobody showed up. Nobody came, and I saw the sheriff passing by on the lake. Please help us. Next weekend is going to be Labor Day. People are going to get killed on that lake. Sheriff leaves at 5 o'clock, and as soon as the sheriff leaves, everything happens over there. At 8 o'clock at night, person was teaching their child how to ski in the dark. 3-year-old kid. The guy would hold the kid, the boat take off, and the guy sitting in the middle of the lake. Imagine if a boat come would run over him. They don't understand that. Okay, on Saturday night, a couple of days ago, sheriff stayed past 5 o'clock. He was there till 8 o'clock. Just look at their record. See how many tickets they wrote. I wish he would have stayed at least till 9 o'clock, because after they saw him leave, they all came out. I just wanted to let you guys know. Please help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talley.
Morning. Joyce Teckel, business owner, lived here about 30 years. Concerned about the billboards that are proposed to go in on Highway 12. I want to take this opportunity to speak to the public to let them know that the Rogers Media is appealing the Planning Commission decision, and they are going to bring it to the board. And I'd like to entreat people to please write letters to the board if you're concerned about billboards coming into the county. And I want to be sure they understand these are 8-foot by 16-foot billboards, elevated 14.5 feet with 25 feet to the top of the sign, on posts that are 3.5 feet in diameter. And in the leasing agreement, it says the leaser shall allow the leasor to light those signs. And they're hard as heck to get out after the fact. So please, folks, write letters if you're concerned about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tickle.
Hello, my name is Laura Sternick, and I'm here about my nursery. I've been here once before, and I was trying to get permits for my nursery in Copperopolis, and it's my understanding that, I don't know if it's today, the board meeting is, or some county officials are going to adopt the rezoning to make that property commercial, but in dealing with the road people in the county, they've told me that the only kind of parking lot I can have is blacktop, which I'm really against blacktop because I went around to all the nurseries in the surrounding area. Besides, through my landscaping business, I do go to all the nurseries in Stanislaus County and San Joaquin County. And the blacktop, I need some kind of a variance because, for one, blacktop in Copperopolis is very, very hot, and it produces oils. In the rain, oils come out of the blacktop and will go in towards where I have an organic garden growing, and I don't want that poison oils into my organic garden. And I've asked the county road department, what's the problem of me putting down, the pavers like you see in downtown Stockton, Lodi, Sacramento. They're paver bricks that you drive on, and use those in the parking lot, besides the fact that they'd be much more appealing than asphalt. And they said, well, the people at that department told me, well, you live in Calaveras County, and we don't do that here. You have to do cement or blacktop. And so I guess I'm kind of asking for some kind of, that the board take it up and make me some kind of variance where I could have pavers, because, I just don't see why it wouldn't be allowed in this county and allowed everywhere else in the world. So I guess it's a question.
Laura, I'm very familiar with your application, and I was not aware that there was any action pending as of today, but I'd be glad to meet with you at the Public Works Department and discuss the options.
Okay.
Okay. Just as a point of information, we park in the parking lot back here that's gravel, so I'm not sure that the county should enforce a rule upon you that we don't.
Yeah, because the
abide by.
nursery in Valley Springs has gravel, the nursery in Columbia has gravel. You know, it lets the water go back into the ground, which is what the whole world is after right now, not
Okay.
wastewater.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello, my name's Darren Borgadalen. I own Struckman Road and a piece of property up in Mountain Ranch. I've been trying to get a permit for 3.5 years, and I've been bribed, blackmailed, and stolen from the county on numerous occasions. But like she says, they come up and they blacktop my road and claim it to be theirs, and they can't show me any dedication, and they can't show me any legal deal on it. And then lately, I've had complaints, so I called the sheriff's department, and they tell me that they were going to send me a packet, and I can do all my own case filing and all this other stuff. So you can see the love that I get from the county, the sheriff's department. They're going to ignore me and do nothing for me. So I called CHP, and when I called them, they said that they couldn't come out and do anything because it was not a county-maintained road. So I don't know who got facts of what. I'm going down to get the copy of that piece of information. I still haven't gotten anywhere with the building department. I went in there and they told me that I had as-built buildings that were not permitted. I said, I know, when you guys came out and red tagged me, that you accused me of that. I pulled out the permits that were issued to me a year and a half prior to that and showed them to the people. I said they were a little bit drop-jawed at that time. And the lady behind the counter says, well, those cards don't have any dates on them. I said, no, but my canceled check does. I said, I know you guys ain't going to do anything for me till I solve this road issue. And then I did file a preliminary injunction against the county, and I'm told that you guys have 1 year to address that. Well, are my kids going to sleep in the cold again for 1 more year? I'm going this week to see a civil specialist in civil rights and civil health and safety issues. He's an attorney, and I'm going to bring him on board too. I hope we can get a little speedier recovery than us than 1 year from now. Thank you.
Mr. Borgadalen, I've noted that you've been in here numerous occasions making allegations about how you've been mistreated by the county. I've checked into some of these things, and we have John Taylor in the audience today. He's the new CDA director.
Yeah.
I inquired about the status of your building permit. Mr. Taylor, do you have any information on that?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, checking the file, the last communication we have on record is December 19th, 2007, a letter to Mr. Borgadalen, basically indicating there's several items that we needed to have in our files before we could go any further. It's an incomplete application, so there's trust calculations, there's drawings, there's a variety of things that are indicated as being required before we can process the application further. And so, for all intents and purposes, the ball has been in his court since last December.
Well, let me bring something to light here. I've taken all this stuff to Stephanie Marino a dozen times. My engineer, for my little 1,500 square foot house that I plan on putting shear wall all the way around, shouldn't require a whole lot of engineering other than truss and Title 24 columns, okay?
Mr. Borgadalen.
They have made me spend $5,000 or $6,000 on engineering. My engineer has taken it into their table on 3 different occasions, and when he called back up to make sure everything was fine, they didn't have any of my paperwork. So this might shed something to light.
Mr. Borgadalen, with all due respect, the head of the department has just read into the record what your communication,
But
the last communication.
Does he know what Stephanie Marino, his predecessor's done?
What matters is what the file that he's got in his hand that shows the last communication with the county.
I have an
with
engineer that has taken care of all this, which will testify in court that there's no excuse for this whatsoever.
Okay, would you introduce yourself later in the meeting to Mr. Taylor? And I'm sure that he can take care of that for you. But please, I personally am not looking with favor on the continuing badgering that you come to the Board of Supervisors. We will take care of your problems just like we do all the other applicants. So please, talk to Mr. Taylor. I would hope that by next week that you could have this worked out and you will not be coming back and saying that we're treating you badly.
When I bring the demands of the county to the table and they don't have it 2 days later, it's my understanding that they just take it from the counter and throw it into the garbage can. That's the way I feel it's been done.
I would submit to you that it's not being handled in that way. Does anybody else have any comments not on the agenda?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here to update you about the Carl Moore program again. I know it's a repeating story, but each year we have been receiving $200,000. For the next year, we have received half of the $200,000. We will be receiving another $100,000 in about 2 months. And we have started receiving applications through this board and the public and qualifying applicants. I'm encouraging to come up with the application and have an approved diesel engine installed or repaired or new engine installed in your truck or heavy-duty truck. And I have been contacted by one of the board members too. He will be sending me a couple of applicants, and I'll be happy to give away that money. Item number 2 is that $1 million I have been promising to the county. $1.3 million has been set aside for the county school bus program, and we will be distributing that through the San Joaquin Valley District. Another item which I would like to bring it to the board is last year we were going to lose about $30,000 which were supposed to be sent back to the state. I have been able to find a qualifying applicant, and we will be able to keep that $30,000 too. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Lockmere, what are you going to do about the dispute between our two high school, between Calaveras and the Bret Hart?
I believe that fight is over because both the school districts have agreed to get the money in the same ratio the qualifying buses are at this time. That has been settled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lockmere. Do we have any other persons wishing to comment on items that are not on the agenda this morning? Okay, seeing none, let's go to item number 9. This is a discussion of possible action regarding the resolution proclaiming September 2008 as Recovery Happens Month in celebration of persons in recovery living sober, and this is by Behavioral Health.
Good morning. My name is Bryant Wilson. Mr. Chairperson, members of the board, I'm a counselor at Behavioral Health Services Substance Abuse Program. The reason we are here today is to ask you to proclaim the month of September as Recovery Happens Month in Calaveras County. This year the theme is Join the Voices of Recovery, Real People, Real Recovery, which is being celebrated across the state and the nation throughout the month of September. This campaign helps people access treatment for substance abuse disorders and highlights the financial and human costs that alcohol and drug dependence has on one's health, self-esteem, and relationships. We are proud that this will be the 5th anniversary the Calaveras County Behavioral Health Substance Abuse Program has gone to Sacramento to join in the celebration on the west steps of the Capitol. An estimated 5,000 people will be there at that rally. There we will be served a pancake breakfast. Later we'll be able to access information on other services throughout the state. And around 11, there'll be a rally to thank the governor and the legislators for their funding provided for programs like Prop 36, drug court, and treatment centers throughout the state of California. On Monday, September 15th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., Behavioral Health Substance Abuse Program and the Prevention Program and our new perinatal program will be holding an open house. We want to invite the board and all other local agencies and the public to join the Voices for Recovery, Real People, Real Recovery. We will be having tours, videos, and displays about methamphetamine, DUI, programs, youth and adult treatment services, along with a few of our community partners. We will also be serving refreshments. I would like to give the board, the members of the board, a token of our appreciation by giving you Recovery Happens t-shirts, along with some pamphlets prepared by the perinatal program. You okay?
Thank you. I'm going to shoot you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I can't read this.
Can you want to?
Possibly could give one to Steve as well, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Jennifer, John, and Judith, and from our perinatal program, Melissa, to share their experience, strength, and hope with you. Again, thank you for this opportunity, because we know that when treatment works,
Recovery happens.
thank you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer, and I'm a graduate of the Calaveras County Drug Court Program. And I have since went to college and got my certification to become a drug and alcohol counselor. I would like to tell you a little bit about my struggles and how I got to where I am today. I have been struggling with the disease of addiction since I was 14 years old. I am now 32 years old and have 16 months and 16 days clean and sober. Thank you. Through the program at the Calaveras County Behavioral Health, I have learned how to be the woman I am today. I am involved with my children's lives, and I am a productive woman in the society. I am involved in my recovery, and I love my life today. I would like to thank all the counselors and everyone else who had a part in helping me become who I am today. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's John, and I'm in the drug and alcohol program. At 21, I made a decision that changed my life. I tried meth for the first time. With that one choice, I ended my life as I knew it and began an out-of-control spiral that did not stop for 8 years. I immediately jumped into the lifestyle with both feet. I started dealing and using and not caring about what I did or who I hurt. My family suffered when I would get angry or take off or quit a great job. We lost our home and our cars and all of our possessions several times. I have us to the bottom over and over just to keep my addiction going. I did not care. I have been arrested more times than I keep track of. I have spent 410 days of the last 7 years in 3 jails. My charges have ranged from domestic violence to transportation of a controlled substance to multiple violations of probation. Every day I sat in jail, I told myself I would never use again. But before I even made it home, I would be looking forward to getting back to where I left off. I would forget consequence that fast. I always knew that I was doing was wrong. I always wanted an out. I tried to stop several times on my own. For a while I thought I might succeed. Then something like the death of my daughter would give me a reason to use. At that time I figured, hey, this is so tragic, how could anyone blame me? I now see that there was no honor in justifying my actions by the death of my daughter. After my last arrest, I once again said, John, you have to change. I once again stopped on my own. I served 106 days in jail and was ordered to join the drug and alcohol and anger management programs. I thought to myself, great, I don't want to do this. I don't need this. I did my time, just leave me to myself. How will I juggle all these things? Since starting the programs, I made a decision that has changed my life. I tried a program for the first time. With that one choice, I ended my life as I knew it and began a long, hard, but rewarding uphill climb. I have been given the tools and a network of friends that are there to help when faced with the harmful urges. Thanks to everyone involved in making programs available, I now have been clean for 413 days. I have been rewarded with my family accepting me back into their lives. I am respected by those around me and those I meet. I have a life with meaning. I look forward to the rewards a clean and sober life will bring for my family and I. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Judy, and I'm here with my peer members of a behavioral health substance abuse intensive outpatient program. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of this board and all the citizens of Calaveras County for their dedication to programs of recovery. I am grateful to be a participant in my IOP. There I'm receiving the education, support, and treatment I need to maintain a clean and sober life. There I am encouraged to work towards recovering my place as a productive and self-sufficient member of society. My counselors have introduced me to an invaluable network of resources. At CalWorks, I have access to employment services, the food stamp program, and CMSP, which I desperately needed to address some serious medical and dental concerns. At the Job Connection, I research employment opportunities and obtain information that helps me make decisions about being able to further my education and hone my workforce skills. At our county library, I am a volunteer tutor in the adult literacy program, and that most fulfilling endeavor allows me to share my abilities as I aspire to give something back to our community. Today, I am exuberant about tomorrow because so many people are working together to help me work my program of recovery. And I want to thank you all very much for your service and leadership, and please express my sincere appreciation to your constituencies. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa. My clean date is 12/02/07. Since coming into the perinatal program, I have learned how to become a better mother, connect and build bonds with other women, but most importantly, I've learned very important tools to stay sober and live my life clean. Having Tina and Julie as my counselors in the perinatal program, they're so very understanding, and it's made it so easy just to relax and become the person I am today. Thank you.
Good morning. Jeannie Boyce, Director of Calaveras County's Health Services Agency. I'd like to thank the board for all your continued support for our funding for treatment. I'd like to applaud all the individuals in this room who have taken the step to recovery. We have a lot of support in this county, and I oftentimes hear that people don't know about the services. We want to invite the public to our open house on September 15th. We have resources available. You can always call 754-6555. We have somebody available to talk to you if you want to learn more about drug addiction, treatment, resources. We're here to help. And I want to acknowledge all our partnerships that we work together in the county, whether it's CalWorks, probation, the court, HRC, Head Start. It takes a network to work together to help people recover from their drug and alcohol addiction, to access resources, to get a job, to become tax-paying members of our community, and to give back. And together, as neighbors, friends, relatives, we all know somebody who suffers from the disease of addiction or alcohol, and we can help. So it takes a village, and I thank you, and I thank all of the people here who provide the support necessary to help all of us be a healthy community. Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion on this item?
We'd like the board to adopt the resolution proclaiming September Recovery Happens Month.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to adopt the resolution. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried by a 4-0-1. Thank you for coming. And we're going to take a 5-minute break before we start in on item 10. We'll reconvene at 9:45. May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? We're going to get this going on. Wow. What an unruly group. Okay, we're going to reconvene the meeting here with item number 10. Okay, a discussion and possible action on a resolution for the siting agreement for Northern California Reentry Facility. This is a sheriff's action.
Dennis Downham. This agreement is to allow us to move forward with the reentry facility in partnership with Amador and San Joaquin counties. It also allows us to continue participating in the AB 900 process for jail funding. This agreement has been reviewed by our county council, county councils in Amador and San Joaquin counties, as well as the sheriff's departments, public health, and probation departments of those counties. If I can answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to.
Dennis, has there been any change in the status of this AB 900 funding for this year?
Bill, the state has given us drop-dead dates where decisions were going to be made starting on May 8th. We passed the last drop-dead date on August 14th, and they extended it for another 30 days. The next promised drop-dead date is September 18th. This is absolutely the most convoluted system I have ever participated in my life. We do know that there are a couple of counties ahead of us that are having very significant problems with reentry siting. And quite frankly, if they would have stuck to the promised August 14th date, both of those departments would have fallen off the table. What will happen in this 30 days we're in, I don't know. September 18th or immediately thereafter, I will be able to come to you hopefully and say, instead of $10 million, we're fully funded, or we're at $10 million, and it is making it so unbelievably difficult to plan.
I believe that, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I have two questions.
Yes, Maria. go ahead.
Dennis, I have two. The facility is limited to 500 beds.
Yes.
Is it going to be a breakdown, like we're going to have 10 beds for us and 8 for Amador and the rest for San Joaquin? Or is it just based on their risk assignment?
Well, certainly part of it's going to be based on inmates available. But initially, we anticipated that Calaveras County would need between 40 and 50 beds, and Amador almost mirrors us. So between Amador and Calaveras, we'll take up about 100 of those beds, or maybe slightly less. But certainly if there's an available bed and there's a San Joaquin person, I'm sure they're going to put them in there.
But we don't make that decision.
CDCR will make it on their evaluations and their assessments of people, but looking at what we have coming out of the state prisons, we anticipate between 40 and 50 will be our people.
Okay. Now, the CDCR is going to take ownership in fee title to the land, as I read this? For
the reentry facility?
NCRF,
Well,
CDCR, which is the
California
Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, has sufficient title of ownership to the land.
Well, yeah, it's in their facility in Stockton, that the old women's prison. The state has owned that for years.
So that's the same thing.
Yes.
So are we going to still have a, like a joint powers agreement or an MOU on the reentry facility?
We will have an MOU between the 3 counties, but this is the necessary part to partnership with the state.
Okay.
Any other comments? Sheriff, I just have one question about the facility down there. Most people know that that was built and operated for a good many years as a women's detention facility exclusively. I only would imagine there's a lot of retrofitting that has to be done for this co-ed facility or whatever it's going to be. But is that work already done, or is it underway, or how is that progressing?
It's underway, and they determine it'll be completed by December, but it will not be a co-ed facility from my understanding. I can't remember which county, but there's a county further south that is putting in a reentry facility for females.
Okay. All right. I misunderstood how it was going to be handled. But okay. Any other board questions?
Has county council reviewed this?
Yes, I looked at it. I reviewed it.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? I guess we have staff members wishing to comment on this item. They're going to have an extensive ag program down there, Mary. So.
All right. Mike Pilitich, Chief Probation Officer. This should be a good partnership, but it's needed, and I think the thing that's critical to it is going to help us with the jail here. And it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about earlier as the recovery happens, because the whole thing starts with somebody does something that gets them into some hot water, the sheriff's office will make an arrest, or police departments, and then they start on this road to recovery. And if we can do that, and if we have this better jail, which this is going to help us, and helped us get that money for the jail, it just makes more sense. We can start doing some programming so we won't have to have so much need for reentry. We could maybe have no exit programs to where our people in our community, when they meet up with breaking the law, we can do some work here so they don't have to go to prison. So this is wonderful. The sheriff's office has been working hard on this. I know Eddie Ballard, or Captain Ballard, has been not pulling out his hair, but has been working hard on this and doing a good job. So it's a fun project to be involved with, and with Jeannie and just everybody who is. It's another one of those good collaboration stories. So thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else wishing to comment on this item? Okay, if not, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for action.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes on a 4-0-1. Okay, moving on to item number 11. Okay, this is a public hearing and possible board action regarding two resolutions establishing an agricultural preserve and California land conservation contract number 290 for Sidney Weinstein and Randall J. Nathan.
Okay, thank you. This is the public hearing, which pertains to me. Good morning. This morning I'm bringing forward a request from Randy Nathan and Sidney Weinstein to establish an agricultural preserve and enter into a California land conservation contract with the county. Randy and Sidney own approximately 135 acres of land off of Free Coast City Road. They are registered and certified organic growers. They grow organic grapes, leafy vegetables, other vegetable crops, and fruits. They provide their own restaurant in San Francisco with the organic produce that restaurant uses. It's a pizza parlor, a California type of pizza parlor in San Francisco. And they also provide numerous other upscale San Francisco restaurants with the produce from their garden here in Calaveras County. The Ag Advisory Committee recommends that the board enter into contract with Randy and Sidney as well as establish an agricultural preserve on their property. The property is off of Free Coast City Road, in between the rites of passage and Sheep Ranch, the town of Sheep Ranch, and staff finds this proposal to be completely uncontroversial. So any questions of the board? Mr. Nathan is in the audience today to answer any questions you may have specifically of him.
Mary, why didn't we get a feasibility study from the farm advisor?
I have been on the property numerous times and have done inspections myself with regards to his organic produce. He's required to submit information to the state of California for his organic registration, who in turn submits a copy to me, which indicates his annual production.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board questions? Mary, I just, did you have something?
No, I was going to make a motion.
I just have a question here. That this aerial photograph that's in the packet, it shows what appears to be some hillside, typical hillside grapes, but there's extensive terracing on this property too. I'm just curious about whether that's predates the current activities or just curiosity more than anything else.
Randy Nathan.
Good morning. I'm Randy Nathan. I'm one of the owners of the property with my wife. The terracing that you're looking at on the left-hand side of the road is terracing for the future. It was put in many years ago. I haven't gotten that far. I'm exhausted. I'm getting old. The question is, can I go that far or not? But I'm hoping I can.
Okay, it just looks, it was unusual enough that I had to ask a question about it. Sorry. Any other questions of Mr. Nathan? Okay, I'd like to, any other questions? I don't want to open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to comment on this item?
Diane Keenan. If I'm understand things correctly, you're voting on the conservation contract, and right now, in fact, as I understand the process, normally you're supposed to go to the Planning Commission first to get a rezone.
This is an ag preserve.
Then
this is
come to you and have the conservation contract approved. Because right now, if you approve the conservation contract, you're approving a contract on something that's still an A1.
This is not a conservation contract.
Oh.
This is an ag preserve.
Right, ag preserve. But you're voting on an ag preserve contract that still has an A1 zoning.
Mary, maybe you can clarify this. I don't really think that it's necessary. I mean, people can put their properties in the Williamson Act, and this is what this is all about.
Last December, you had an item that had not been rezoned to an agricultural preserve. It went back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission rezoned it to an agricultural, and then it came back to you to approve. And I'm using sort of that as a guideline. So what's different about this one? Why is it not going to the Planning Commission first to be rezoned, then come to you for to be voted into an ag preserve?
Well, if this is an issue, I think that the person standing behind you can answer it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Robert Selman, CDA Planning Director. This is a slight variation from what we have done in the past, only relative to your board's consideration of these agricultural preserves. Mary, rather than waiting till December and then rushing them all through and trying to get all the contracts and everything in order, shifted her process. So she is basically bringing the contracts to you for consideration and approval earlier in the year. What we will do, and what we have always done, is our process is at the end of the year, after the last of the contracts are approved, and there's still time to have more put on the agenda, then we take the entire packet forward to the Planning Commission under a single application, and the county initiates, or has actually initiated, the process to do the rezoning from whatever the current zones are to AP to reflect the fact that it will be in an agricultural preserve. So that is the process that we've used. We've always used it. We got behind a year or two, but we're actually current again. So come middle of December or so, we'll actually start the process of our environmental reviews and the final rezonings of the land to agricultural preserve. And I will tell you that agricultural preserve zoning is our most restrictive and environmentally positive zone, so I have never seen the Commission or the Board ever not consider approving the zone change after they have considered the review of the agricultural preserve contract itself.
And for one further point of clarification, this contract, like any other contract that I will bring before you, become effective January 1st.
Okay, and for further clarification, this proposal has been reviewed by the county's Agricultural Advisory Committee, and they have unanimously recommended its approval. So it's not arriving here the first time without a previous review. So any other questions on this item? Okay, if not, I'd like to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. The chair entertains a motion.
Do we need, can we do these together? There's a resolution establishing Ag Preserve and one resolution approving California land conservation contract. Are they?
County Council, we can combine these.
I will make that motion for both those.
Second.
Yes.
Okay, moved and seconded for both resolutions, or the approval of the preserve and the contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it carries on a 4-0-1.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda this morning is public hearing and possible board action regarding resolutions. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading from the wrong item. Public hearing and possible board action regarding it's application number 2001-110, zoning amendment, revised conditional use permit, and addendum to the environmental impact report for California asbestos monofill, and also known as CAM, C-A-M. To make certain changes to permitted disposal operations in the former asbestos mine pit located in southwestern Calaveras County. Okay, do we have the applicant? Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing on this item and start with the applicant's presentation.
Go to staff first.
Okay, excuse me, OSHA, I'm a rookie chairman here, so I'm getting comments from the side here. We're starting with staff here. Mr. Selman, would you enlighten us?
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, actually, we're going to go to staff very quickly because they have the best, most succinct, and probably most practiced description of what they're doing on this site, so I'm going to let them take care of that for you. Very briefly, this is a recommendation from the Planning Commission for approval for a minor modification for an existing series of permits for the operation of the reclamation of the former California asbestos mine at this site. Now, just very briefly, there is a more or less 16 million cubic yard hole that is the result of the mining project. This county has authorized that hole as part of its reclamation plan to add other inert substances and tires to that site as part of its fill process. All of that is currently under permit and is regulated. The consideration today is a change of operations that deal only with the composition of the tires that are actually placed into the project site. Currently, they are allowed to be assembled into basically a large bundle and then buried. They are contained within mineral earth soils and other regulatory treatments that have been provided. The changes that are proposed here is that they be allowed to cut those tires into small pieces and then within those cells mix them with mineral soils and asbestos tailings so that rather than having a solid, if you would, block of tires buried in cells throughout the area, you're going to have cells with a mix of cut tires and blended mineral soils. So it took about 1.5 years to go through the process, perhaps even longer with the state, to get them to agree that this was in fact a scientifically valid way of dealing with just the disposal of those tires, and I'm sure that the applicants can go through the entire agonizing steps that we went through to get to this point. There is no change because of this permit in the number of tires that are allowed to be brought onto the site. That's already set by prior conditions. There is no substantial change in the operations on site, other than, in fact, they will be cutting those tires and moving pieces of tires rather than whole tires into the pit as they are set. The cell structure will remain. That was one of the changes that was originally proposed, but in order to deal with the state, the cell structure between all of these bundles of now cut tires will remain in place. All of the monitoring will remain in place. We have gone through with the developers and have an extensive fire protection and modification, or fire protection and prevention program. We've worked extensively with the local fire department and the state of California to deal with those issues. We are providing the environmental review, and we did an addendum, which is basically it's a review to determine if any additional environmental impacts existed that had not been previously reviewed, or are based on the proposed changes needing further review. The outcome of that is that there were no changes that were significant, no new mitigation measures have been added. So one of the things we will ask you to do is certify the addendum. That addendum will then be the basis in the environmental review for a number of different agencies who will have to give subsequent permits, including the siting for our own waste management plan. Let me jump around just a little bit. We're also doing one of those delayed zoning ordinances that we discovered had actually been initiated many years ago. And when the process of mining ended and the proposals for reclamation came into being, one of the things the county did was they initiated this zoning change to industrial. We discovered after an awful lot of looking that never got processed. So again, just so that the clearly industrial aspects of this reclamation plan are covered under appropriate zoning as opposed to mining, we have gone through and doing that industrial zoning. We have, because of general plan limitations, got an agreement that the only uses that are allowed at this time is this proposed use, and anything that is directly related to operations of this use. There is a conditional use permit amendment which just specifies the difference in the operational conditions as proposed versus currently existing. And lastly, we are asking is to accept the certificate of acceptance recording the covenants that do in fact restrict the uses on this ground for this particular mining reclamation process. The Planning Commission considered all of that, and they have recommended approval. Staff is recommending that you, in fact, take the actions that are listed after you've had a chance to do the public input. And I would invite you to have this presentation if you can. They do an excellent job. This is an amazing and interesting process. And I will tell you, the sheriff thought his process was complicated. We ought to try dealing with the ones we've been dealing with for the last 7 to 8 years. So anyway, that's my presentation. Unless you have questions.
Any questions of Mr. Selman?
Not at this point, Mr. Selman.
Okay, will the applicant make their presentation?
Thank you. I thought Bob would have something to say. Good morning, Acting Chairman Thomas and members of the board. My name is Osha Meserve from the firm of Soluri, Emmerich & Meserve in Sacramento, and I've been working on this project since 2000, if you can believe that. So I'm very happy to be here today before you, although, as I'll explain a little bit later, it's not quite the end of the process for us. Let's see. Just to clarify, we would like to have time for a rebuttal or to answer questions that may arise after our presentation or the public hearing, if that's
Certainly.
okay.
Certainly.
I'd like to introduce the experts that we have on our team today with us to be available to answer questions and present information about the project. First, we have George Jackson. He's the operations manager for the site, right here on my left. He has been working at the site for 30 years, back into the time when it was an asbestos mine, and then into the time starting in the 90s when it began to be used also as a disposal site as part of the reclamation plan. And then just to his left, Rick Mitchell from RMC Geoscience, who has 25 years working on technical issues associated with disposal and mine reclamation, and he'll be presenting some information to you later. And to his left, Justin Caparoso of Waste Management Sacramento Market Area Office, who works on community relations issues, and you may have heard from him here and there on this project or other waste management affairs. And then to his left on the end there, Glenn Roycroft, who's the site engineer for waste management, and he has 10 years of experience with disposal operations, somewhat similar to CAM, although we have to say CAM is probably a pretty unique site. With that, I'll just be covering, I'll try to be brief this morning. I know this there's a tremendous amount of material in your packet, and hopefully you've had a chance to take a quick look at that. But I'll just be giving a brief review of the site's history and current entitlements, just briefly add on a little bit of detail to the need for the requested changes. Then Rick will be talking a little bit about emergency response and fire preparedness, and then I'll go over some of the benefits of the project. Let's see. So I did bring a timeline, which is and I'd like to hand that out if that's all right.
Thank you.
And I don't intend to go over all the detail in this, but it's just sort of a compilation of some of the important dates in the site's long history. But, of course, what we're going to focus on is just the minor modifications to the existing permitted operations that are requested today. So just an overview, the mining operation started in about the 60s. And asbestos mining occurred there for several years, and it was a very productive site during that time. In 1978, while asbestos mining was still occurring, the reclamation plan was approved by the Board of Supervisors here that the reclamation plan indicated that one of the reclamation options for the site should be to look at use of the pit and use for disposal, and also with the fact that there's a lot of mill tailings and other materials left on the site as a result of the mining that would make appropriate cover material. Also, the impermeability of the bedrock in the pit made it seem as though it would be an appropriate site possibly for disposal operations. So after mining continued up until 1986, and then at that point, that aspect of the reclamation plan was followed up upon. Some geological and environmental review of the site took place, and an EIR was produced. And then in 1990, a use permit was issued by the county to dispose inert materials, including asbestos-containing waste, or what we call ACW. And then in 94, the request was approved to increase the amount of ACW that could be disposed at the site. As the need for ACW disposal sort of tailed off, the site was looking for other types of inert waste that could also be disposed in the pit, and that's when the issue of tires came up, and an EIR addendum was produced and approved in 1997, along with a modified use permit that allowed disposal of tires in the mine pit. And I think the other thing I included in your handout is the definition of inert waste. And it's a water board produced definition that really has to do with the ability of the material to produce leachate. And so that's why, although ACW and other types of materials, those all fall under the definition of inert waste according to the water board, and those are the types of materials that have been disposed at the site already and are proposed for continued disposal at the site. So there's no proposal to do municipal solid waste or other leachate producing materials. So after 1997, disposal of ACW continued, and then tire disposal occurred at the site for 2 years. And at that point, the waste board started looking at, whereas they had not asserted permitting authority over disposal of inert materials such as tires before, they decided that they thought they should get into regulating those types of sites. And so they initiated a regulatory process, which eventually resulted in the promulgation of the waste tire monofill regulations in 2003. So after the 2-year period of disposal of waste tires, the CAM facility, in agreement with the waste board, ceased tire disposal operations, anticipating that the monofill regs would only take a year or so to promulgate. It took until 2003. And then once that occurred, then it's been an arduous process, as Bob referred to, working with the waste board to go over the technical details of the project, to get all of their experts to sign off on all of the aspects of all the technical aspects of the project. And it's been, I think, lengthened by the fact that we were and once we go forward to the waste board, which is sort of the next step in the process, it would be one of the first waste tire monofill regulations or sites permitted by the waste board. That's not to say there aren't waste tire monofills. Not so many in California, but there are monofills throughout the United States and elsewhere that are operating effectively. But it's just a new process for the waste board, and that's sort of bogged down the process, you might say, of getting the permitting done. But let's see, so highlights of the existing waste board, air pollution control district, and water board and county issued entitlements include the ability to have 17 waste material trucks enter the site per day. The waste board permit for the tire facility permit allows storage of tires for up to 90 days prior to processing. So that's not a county issued permit, and that's an already issued entitlement. And to dispose 35,000 tons per year of asbestos-containing waste and other inert materials, including tires, in the pit. Also, reusable tires can be diverted from disposal for reuse if they arrive at the site, although it's unlikely. Most tires that would end up at the site would be ones that could not be reused. And then also the site is permitted to use the inert mill tailings as cover material for the disposal operation. And since they don't contain any organic material, they make a very good cover material. And all of this is in furtherance of reclaiming the site from the mining operations that occurred before. Last week, we sent a letter to the board, which hopefully you've received, that included two exhibits that show the list of the site's current entitlements, as well as a list of the environmental review documents that have been prepared over the course of the site's history. And does anybody need an extra copy of that?
We did provide copies.
Okay. Great. Okay, so from that material, I think it's fairly obvious, there are many existing entitlements as well as many environmental review processes that have taken place with respect to this site. And so the current request really is a minor request for changes because of changes to the regulatory backdrop that require modifications to the county's permits and then also now require state-issued permits, whereas they weren't required before. Because in the interim, I didn't mention ACW sites now also require a waste board issued permit, whereas they didn't before. So things change over time. And as explained in the EIR addendum and elsewhere, The modified project that would be approved by the use permit mods you have before you today would include disposal of tire shreds mixed with in a 2/3, 1/3 ratio with the mill tailings on one unit of the pit, one side of the pit, and then the disposal of ACW and type A inert waste, which has a specific definition as well, on the other side. And these two units are separated by a 4-foot wall of inert mill tailings. And it's important to note, too, that the site is underlain by the impermeable bedrock, which has been thoroughly investigated by the geologists throughout the site's history. And then also, although the site is somewhat near the Stanislaus River, the way the geology of the site is, in addition to the fact that the bottom of the pit is actually below the bottom of the river, and so there is not a pathway for materials to flow from the pit to the river, even if that could occur. So just want to touch on emergency preparedness and fire safety throughout the county, and also the review process that we've done with the Waste Board in preparation for going to them for the later permits. Fire safety has obviously been a primary concern, and Rick Mitchell worked on the technical aspects of the fire protection and control and mitigation plan that is required by the Waste Board now for waste tire monofills. And so he's going to present a little bit of information about that issue to inform you on it.
Well, good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. My name is Rick Mitchell, and I've actually been working on the site, I think, probably 3 or 4 years longer than OSHA. And one of the issues that has been a primary concern out there has been fire safety. And fire safety has been a concern because there have been a number of fires, including several well-publicized fires that have occurred at above-ground, uncontrolled, and illegal waste tire disposal sites. There's also been some limited evidence of heating and combustion at several highway embankments that were constructed of shredded tires. But as we'll see here on the next couple of pages of your handout, neither one of these situations is applicable to the planned CAM disposal operations. If you turn to the I believe it's the third page on the handout, there have been some above-ground fires at uncontrolled and illegal facilities, and as shown by these pictures here, these facilities can contain from tens of thousands to millions of tires. And the tires, typically, they're not placed in any controlled storage areas. They're just spread out across the countryside. And fires can start there. And typically, when they start because of arson, because of lightning, because of fast-moving grass fires that come into contact with the tires, or they can start from down power lines as well. But if you turn to the next page, I think you'll see that this isn't really applicable to CAM, and CAM provides safe temporary above-ground storage for the tires. If you look at the upper aerial photograph right here, the tire storage area and tire processing area is located in a very small portion of the site right here. The next photograph down shows a close-up view of where the tires will be processed and stored before they are placed in the pit. The site is fenced and secure, so people can't get in without going through a guard shack, and it's well removed from populated areas. Storage area is very, very limited, as you can see in this photograph. You can see the two little horseshoe-shaped areas in the photo. Those are the storage areas. They're constructed of inert mill tailings, and there's no vegetation near these areas. Lightning rods will be installed next to the areas, and in the event a fire were to start right there's abundant mill tailings on hand for fire suppression. You could go into this area, use equipment, pull the tires apart, and bury them with mill tailings, and should something happen in that area, you could extinguish it very quickly. Well, similarly, if we look at subsurface fires, they're not very likely at the CAM facility. So once the tires have gone through the processed area and they're placed in the pit and they're buried, we don't believe that there is a very strong or very high likelihood of fire occurring. But it is a concern because there have been a couple of sites where subsurface fires have occurred. These sites have included 3 highway embankments that were constructed. 2 were constructed in Washington, 1 was constructed in Colorado. They were constructed of shredded tires, and the tires were just placed in with no mixing, so it was tire-to-tire contact. And they experienced problems with heating and, in one case, with combustion. Those embankments were studied in some detail by a number of different people, and they concluded that the fires or the heating probably started from either the presence of organic soils, which led to some microbial activity, crumb rubber in the presence of air, which can lead to spontaneous combustion, microbial degradation similar to what you would see in a standard landfill that can generate heat, and the possible oxidation of steel wires, again, in the presence of air. However, there's been more than 70 highway embankments that have been constructed in similar manner that have had no problems, and they're functioning today. The difference between those embankments and the 3 that have had problems is they didn't have the organic soils, the microbial activity, or things that could lead to fire. Additionally, there are several waste tire monofills present in the United States. We contacted those facilities because they've all done monitoring over the course of their lifetimes to see if they've had any problems, either with increased temperatures or fire, and none of them have reported any temperature increases. And I'll show you a little bit of temperature monitoring data on the last page of your handout here. Even though we don't think a subsurface fire is likely, the Fire Prevention, Control, and Mitigation Plan, it includes a number of provisions to prevent subsurface combustion. First, as OSHA indicated, the tires will be shredded and mixed with inert tailings. This will do 2 things. It's going to limit the tire-to-tire contact, and it's going to limit air intrusion into the cell. The mixture of tires to mill tailings was designed to fill the voids. And so basically we tried to get the maximum amount of mill tailings in that we could. No crumb rubber is allowed in the facility. That's a requirement that we wanted. It's also a requirement of the state regs. The tires are going to be disposed and confined in cells, and each one of these cells will be surrounded by at least 2 feet of mill tailings. The actual size of the cell will vary, but it's about 200 feet by 200 feet by 20 feet thick. Additionally, a temperature monitoring plan was developed that includes a whole series of actions if temperatures exceed a threshold value, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But I'd like to just briefly look at one of the things that I found to be fairly unique and very helpful at the CAM facility. CAM did take waste tires in under the provisions of a stipulated permit I believe it was in the late 90s. And that's the configuration of that fill is shown on the next page of the handout in Figure 1. And at the time those waste tires were placed, temperature probes were placed in them as well. And recordings from the temperature probes at different depths for the next 7 years are shown in Figure 2. And you can see there is a fluctuation in temperature. It goes up and it goes down, but it goes up and down with the ambient air temperature. And the biggest fluctuation in temperature is at the probe closest to the surface. But you can see that there's no increase in temperature over time. Well, all this information was then used to calibrate a model to evaluate what an optimal probe spacing would be when they go to production. And that information was used to develop the temperature monitoring plan that's included in the Fire Prevention Control Plan. And this plan includes temperature probes that are on average of about 80 feet apart and about 20 feet vertically apart. That's a minimum of 1 probe per cell. The plan includes, the first cell includes 4 probes so that we can make sure we're capturing everything that happens in the cell. Once that cell is filled and it's been monitored, we will say, okay, either 4 probes is appropriate, or we can reduce it back to what all of our modeling tells us is an appropriate level. It also includes surface emission monitoring to see if we have any evidence of subsurface combustion. And then it includes a whole series of evaluation and mitigation measures if the temperature exceeds 150 degrees. And that's a threshold trigger value that is a little bit less than half of the temperature that tire pyrolysis or combustion is thought to occur. It occurs typically above 300 degrees. But we don't think we can ever get to 150 degrees if there's not something going on. So if we get to that point, then it triggers a bunch of actions. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I'll turn it back to OSHA to finish up.
I have some, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm just trying to go back in history. The tires used to be shredded years ago, or the last few years. They weren't put in the cells whole, because I remember seeing the shredding operation. So what's different now is the mix with the mill tailings. They were mixed with something years ago. So when you keep saying we're shredding them now, I thought they shredded them then. So that's one. Two, and if I remember, they were removing the metal from the tires. My memory's not serving me, that's fine. And three, where's the Copper Fire District on this?
To answer your first question, and George, correct me if I'm wrong on this, when the tires initially were placed, they were baled initially. So the tires would come in and they went through a big machine that baled them up, and then the bales were put in the disposal pit and surrounded by mill tailings. Then there was a period of disposal where the tires were shredded. So there are both types of materials in the pit, and the tires that were shredded were mixed with mill tailings.
That's correct.
Yeah.
George Jackson, site, your memory serves you correct. Back in 1998, 1997, 98, tires that come in right from the get-go, they'd be shredded. The key word really is altered. The waste board uses the word altered, and that's where we get confused with these different terminologies. In under altered, the waste board defines it as shredded, cut, sheared, in bale, and then they got definitions of some of those different units. But your memory serves you correct. Since 1990, concurrently, we had altered tires going on there in the form of baled, shredded, sheared. We had shear there as well, and that's always been the case. The difference is the difference that we're requesting now is, again, because of California state regulations, it is the mixing environment with our tailings. And why before, and under your previous use permit, it makes reference to a cell configuration. The difference now, what we're doing and will continue to do with the same type of tires, altered, shredded, and sheared, is we will be mixing them as well as putting them in that shell condition. So that's the difference.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I think you had...
And the Copper Fire District, I couldn't find it. If it was in here, I apologize for missing it. They have been
extensively involved in the entire fire management program, and they are party to this entire process.
Okay, I couldn't. I guess I didn't see that.
I didn't plan to find where they're buried in there, but they actually have been a very, very strong player, including parts of the training and organization to deal specifically with this particular problem.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board questions? Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. Just a couple of clarifications. I think Supervisor Callaway, you asked about protruding wires, and there is a part of the monofill regulations that have specific detail on how far a wire can protrude from a piece of shred. And there's in the back of the final addendum, there's a table called Waste Tire Monofill Regulation Compliance Table, and I could identify the spot for you afterward. But so the table shows each of the monofill regulations and how the site intends to comply with it. So you're right, there is an issue of wires, and that's sort of a quality control issue at the shredder, I would say, and the regs do address that. Also, the study that Rick mentioned with respect to the other 50 or more tire monofills throughout the United States is also something that was appended to the draft EIR addendum that was circulated for public review. So there's quite a bit of information in the record, and that was provided for public review about the research that was done with respect to other tire monofills and their experiences with respect to their operations. Also, just want to clarify with about the above-ground tire storage area that that's an existing permit from the Waste Board, and the request before you today doesn't involve the processing and storage of the tires. The County Environmental Health Department, however, requires that tires stored in those processing areas can only be there for up to 3 months, and that's a vector control issue because water can gather in tires. So that's just another important point, I think. And during the public review process, we were requested and did look at whether it would be possible for the applicant to further limit the number of tires that would be stored prior to processing up in that processing area to see if we could reduce that number, the 46,300 tire equivalents, without interfering with operations. And what we found is that with the number of trucks that are allowed to arrive per day and the unpredictability of when those trucks would arrive and whatnot, that if you had a great day and 17 trucks did arrive filled with tires, then that would basically take up the entire storage area. And so we didn't want to further limit what was already permitted by the Waste Board. And we also followed up with Waste Board tire permitting staff because they have been permitting tire processing operations for quite some time. They just got into the business of doing the monofill disposal ops to see what their record was with respect to fire and emergencies and safety. And for those tire facilities that had above ground storage, none of the facilities, they had never had any experience with fire with any of the facilities that were in compliance with the applicable regulations regarding availability of fire suppression equipment, separation from vegetation, and the type of things Rick was mentioning. Want to just briefly move on to the next steps and the benefits to the community of moving forward on these minor modifications and entitlements. If the board should go ahead and make the requested approvals, the next step is for CAM to go through the solid waste facility permitting process with the LEA, the local enforcement agency who's deputized by the Waste Board to carry out permitting of solid waste facility permits. And I believe Paul Ferriani is here today, and we'd be working with him on that permit. He would issue a draft permit, and then we'd be seeking concurrence from the Waste Board on that. And then at that point, he would be authorized to issue the final permit. Certainly take a few months to get through the technical documents. We have drafts of all that stuff, but it all needs to be updated over time. Things keep changing. Once that permit process is done, then the site could move into the phase of getting ready to ramp up its operations. Right now, it's just been accepting small amounts of ACW over the last few years. So although it has been operational, like I mentioned before, it hasn't accepted any tires because of a request from the Waste Board to wait until the tire permit could be obtained. Market area staff for waste management are currently researching and developing a marketing plan for the inert waste disposal services that could be offered once all these entitlements are completed. And so the ball is rolling on all those things. Benefits of the project include implementing the reclamation plan for the site approved by the Board of Supervisors in '78. And eventually, because the reclamation plan includes use of the mill tailings, and because the rec plan and then the plan that we're talking about today for disposal includes use of the mill tailings, that's going to allow the site to excavate a lot of the steeper slopes of that is sort of a gravelly, small, 3/8-inch gravelly type material to excavate those slopes, make them a little bit closer to the natural contours of the site, and use them beneficially in the pit for the cover material. Ultimately, at full operations, this site would provide 10 jobs, which, it's just got a few people working there now, but the staff would be ramped up to do the disposal and reclamation operations. And that would obviously have economic ripple and multiplier effects in the community. Also, a condition of the existing permit is that 6% of the gross receipts of the site would be paid to the county, and that's divided up in thirds right now, at least, between general fund, public works, and the fire department. Just wanted to mention about the fire department that the new chief of the Copperopolis Fire Department, he wasn't able to be here today, I don't think. I heard he couldn't come, but he did review and also approve the fire plan as required by the Waste Board. The Waste Board regulations require that the fire plan be circulated to the local fire department, and we also circulated it to your Office of Emergency Services for review and comment. And so the new chief has actually, along with the previous chief, had actually both signed off on the fire plan. And that doesn't mean that plan will never change. It's really a living document that is revised over time to utilize information that's gathered at the site, and is evolving, but it's something that's required by the state, and we think it is helpful, and it sort of incorporates. What we did is we incorporated in all of the other emergency plans and other plans that were at the site, and sort of put everything into this one plan so that it would be sort of a one book off the shelf move if guidance is needed on these issues. Also, the request before you today, as we've been talking about, will incorporate the state-of-the-art disposal techniques for inert waste and is in full compliance with the Waste Board requirements, which, as Bob mentioned earlier, the Waste Board was really done a very detailed review, and along with all the experts that we worked with on the applicant side, the Waste Board had their own experts, and that's part of what took so long, is the back and forth, but reviewing all these plans and getting feedback and incorporating that feedback, and it was a very painstaking process, but we think has led to a really good project. And then it's just important to note that the request before you today doesn't include any additional truck trips, no additional tonnage, or different types of materials than were already approved by the board previously for acceptance at the site. So, and then another point is that once this current process is complete with respect to the inert waste disposal, CAM staff and waste management folks will also be looking at other opportunities to beneficially reuse and use this unique industrial site. It's a large site. There's large quantities of aggregate and other materials that may be able to be used in construction projects. There's also, a good access to utilities, and there's also existing structures, and so there are some opportunities for economic development that could occur at this site alongside with and compatible with the reclamation and disposal operations. And so we'd like to continue working with the county and county staff on pursuing some of those opportunities in the future. But just keep in mind that because of the rezone and the restrictive covenant that goes with it, any of those new industrial activities that aren't already authorized would require additional review and permitting, so they wouldn't be permitted uses that could go forward without review. So in conclusion, I just want to thank county staff, and in particular Bob Selman, and also the county's consultant, Lamphir Gregory, for their fine work in bringing this project to the point where you can consider it on the merits. Also want to thank the community, including residents of the Copperopolis and Lake Tulloch area, and the Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center, CSERC. Those folks have taken their time to express concerns regarding the project. We've worked really hard to address those concerns and have incorporated a lot of the suggestions from the community over the course of the years into the proposed project. And the site looks forward to continuing to operate what we think is an environmentally sound operation that is also sensitive to the needs of the community. So we're eager to answer any questions that you may have, and now or after the public hearing.
Any board questions of Ms. Meserve?
I have several, but I'd like to wait till after the public comments.
Okay. OSHA, before you sit down, I've always been an advocate for removing the surfactant materials and stuff that have kind of they've gone over the edge of the mine disposal site. More specifically, what those portions of the tailings that you can see from the reservoir. Years ago, when I first started attending meetings where this application was being discussed, there was a suggestion that the applicant was going to propose to start at the top of those areas and work down, so that essentially you'd be working down to the existing soil conditions, and ultimately it might result in I don't know how many years is this going to take, but at some point in time we could look forward to that whole hillside being revegetated. Is that still remotely possible?
It is. You're just, first of all, as far as location, there's several different types of materials that are left over from the mining operations, and so there's the large boulders, which this project doesn't utilize. There's also the sort of larger gravel stuff, which this project also doesn't utilize, and it's that 3/8 inch sort of large sand material that is what this project would utilize for cover material. And that is the slope, or one of the slopes at least, that you can see from Lake Tulloch looking up at the site. And the restoration plan for that slope that's being developed in furtherance of the reclamation plan, so it's not directly connected to the disposal, is looking at benching that slope in a way that can deal with erosion issues long term, and that would be stable and those kind of things. And I think it would look better. For sure. There is an issue with revegetation is one of the things that obviously would be great. There's an issue with getting things to grow in that material. There's no organic matter in it, and there's very high or low pH. High pH, thank you. So we've worked with some specialists in vegetation to think about if we could amend that. It may be, though, that it simply just has to be a benched slope, and we haven't really gotten to that level of detail, but we'll be working in particular with the Water Board, because this deals with their general jurisdiction over water quality. And they have a long-term, they would really like the site to move forward with regrading that slope. Although there haven't been any issues with it right now, they feel that it would be beneficial to move forward and get to a less steep slope. And so we'll be looking at re-veg. I don't know if it will be feasible or possible, but it's certainly something that we're looking at.
Okay. Early on in this discussion, Mr. Selman mentioned a figure of 16 million. Was that 16 million tons or 16 million yards or cubic yards?
16 million cubic yards.
Okay. Well, I also heard on one of my visits out to the site, George, that you said that only 3% of what was ever in the pit left the property. So there's still 97% of what came out of the pit still on the ground out there. Is that about?
There's a lot more because everything had to, in my understanding, had to be blown apart to get the asbestos out of it. There's a lot more volume of material than could fit back in the pit. So really what we're talking about at this point is putting back some of the material that could fit back in the pit, and then moving the portions of the finer 3/8 inch material up into other what we're calling safe storage areas and regrading them, so pulling them up off the steep slope and putting them elsewhere on the site. But you're right, everything can't fit back in the pit, even if we were to just put tailings in.
Okay, well, I just think that's really kind of a fascinating thought that 16 million cubic yards came out. I mean, even if it all was compressible, there's still 15.5 million yards sitting on the site that didn't leave. So, anyway, any other questions? Okay, if the applicant is through, I'll open the public hearing and ask for any comments from the public. don't all rush up at once. Okay, hearing or seeing no persons wishing to comment, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the Board of Supervisors. Ms. Callaway, you have a question?
My usual fashion, I've given Mr. Selman some of my questions. This was a really good packet. I appreciate that, Bob. So I'll just go with Caltrans, and they're also the one from Mike Robinson and their May 30 letter. It sounds like to me they have issues. I guess I couldn't figure out how we were resolving that, so I'll just sort of, should I just go through some of my questions and then you can take them as you like?
I can try to.
When you said the final addendum, what does final mean? They can't have any more?
No, that's the final.
As in a draft and a final.
Yes,
okay, not in final, because they've had addendums before.
It's just the addendum plus the comments plus the responses to the comments.
Okay. The resolution approving the conditional use permit, is there a lifespan for the site? I was listening to the conversation we just had. I wasn't clear. You're going to have so many, just like Milton, there's so many cells, and it's going to have a lifespan. And
we don't know what the final operational lifespan
Thank you.
It's tied to the reclamation of the project. Obviously, they can only deal with this under this permit is placing material inside that pool.
Okay.
That's physical.
Okay. The letter from council we just got said store up to 90 days prior to processing. I thought all tires stored in the processing area be removed within 6 months. Is it 6 months or 90 days, or are we talking about two separate items? I mean, there's two sites for tires. This letter says 90 days. The resolution on the conditional use permit under the 1996 FEIR Final Environmental Impact Report addendum refers to 6 months. I wasn't clear. Are we 6 months? Two different things?
The answer is 90 days. I mean, I think the use permit has said 90 days, but what Environmental Health provided a letter to the site some years ago saying because of vector control concerns, 90 days is what they would expect to see with the tire. So it's sort of layered, I would say, but the shorter period is what the site considers applies.
So does the resolution need to be modified?
Does the new resolution concern?
That's a resolution for the conditional use permit on page 2, planning condition 2-3B, the middle of it.
3B.
I know. Well, anyway, that's
we can certainly
we can. Okay.
We're all in concurrence that it's 90 days. We'll certainly modify it so it reflects that.
Also on the grant of restrictive easement, number 10. This grant is to be liberally construed in favor of the grant in order to effectuate the purposes of the easement. I absolutely meant nothing to me. On item 10, a grant's to be liberally construed in favor of the grant. So I wasn't clear.
I think it's sort of standard language showing that if the intent, because it's modeled after a conservation easement, so my understanding, and maybe Janice could touch upon it, but it's just to, I think it's really to, there's some kind of problem later on with it. What the grant is saying is construe it in favor of the grant in the first place, which is to, provide a conservation benefit.
Hi, Jen Selliott, County Council. And OSHA and I worked closely on this, and I just want to say it's a pleasure working with OSHA on this project. Yes, if there's any interpretation issues in the future, what that means is you liberally construe that interpretation to the purpose of the restrictive easement, which is to restrict the uses. So that's why that language is in there. It is pretty standard language in those types of documents.
Standard for counsel, not for supervisor.
It's attorney speak.
Yeah, okay. I had to read it 3 times, so I thought I would just circle that one. I think those are the key. I think I understand what a minor modification is. Bob, I think I got that one. Thank you. So it's really Caltrans. Do we need to modify the resolution to 90 days? And I think that's
With respect to Caltrans, Bob, should I answer that?
Well, I think our view was there is no operational change relative to any potential effects to the highway. All of those entitlements are already in place, and they've been in place and have been through the full environmental review. The only changes we're dealing with here are what happens once those materials are delivered onto the site.
And it seems to be less truck traffic than there used to be. This is 17 trucks a day, and somewhere I remember 30 or 35. But
it's less traffic than occurred under mining operations, certainly, but the traffic is the same as was permitted in 94 for the first
17.
time. 17. Yeah, that's the level that was analyzed in there. And then, we did the page 2 of the Planning Commission staff report includes a response on the traffic issue that was raised by Caltrans. And it's basically what Bob was talking about. And I actually did, at the time we received the letter, call up the person who wrote it and ask about it. And, it really seemed... They have some concerns. They have an agenda of trying to get more funding for road improvements, basically, and it seemed that they were interested in seeing if this project could be an avenue for that. And like Bob was saying, since it's just revision to an existing entitlement that doesn't include any change in traffic, the county staff determined that it wasn't really appropriate to make that modification, or to, that there was any need to address that issue. And, and I spoke with the Caltrans people about this. They told me they would follow up on it and get back to me about whether that answered their concerns. They never got back to us again. So we received that first correspondence back some time ago before the June meeting of the Planning Commission, and then they haven't followed up on it. And it was my understanding from speaking with the gentleman from Caltrans that it really had more to do with trying to find ways they could get things funded. He was even interested in seeing if the site could somehow fund improvements that had already been done to the corner of O'Byrne's Ferry Road and Highway 4. So,
you don't need to go any further with that.
Okay.
I'm experiencing them.
And I also asked him for a copy of the letter that he said they had submitted on the draft EIR addendum, which was circulated for public review years ago, and because he said that we never responded to it, but he couldn't locate a copy of it for me, and I contacted all the consultants, and we looked everywhere for it, and we don't think it exists.
Oh, I did have one more, which I had asked. Bob, I emailed you on the general plan designation. Going forward, yes.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we have the restricted easement, or the restriction as proposed. At this point, we are trying to be sure that we are getting only the entitlements necessary to do this operation. There is no absolute commitment to this in the general plan. They have a long-term reclamation plan that has to occur. If in the process of the general plan we determine this is an appropriate site for further industrial types of development, that designation can occur. If the determination is made that it is not an appropriate site for further industrial development, then that would also be addressed in the general plan. We do not believe that this locks in, if you would, any future commitment to that general plan change.
Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Claudino, do you have any?
No, I think this has been very thoroughly vetted over the years, and this is, in my opinion, not a particularly significant amendment, and we've been working on it for a considerable period of time. think it's a good use for the site, from everything I can see and read in the documents, and I think we should proceed with it.
Okay, I very much agree with you. I know we're not looking too far into the future for possible reuse of the facilities out there, but I just think that there's 200,000 square feet of warehouse available out there that would be and the infrastructure for the water and the sewer treatment. It'd be an unfortunate thing if we didn't try to find some additional appropriate uses. So, anyway, if there are any other comments, if not, we have...
motion? I'll make a motion then, Mr. Chair. First, that the board adopt... shall I just make all four and then do it in one?
First, we would ask that you adopt the addendum for the environmental impact report, and then each of those subsequent motions.
Okay, then I'll so move on the addendum.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the addendum. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we have no nays.
Okay, then, Bob, next up is the adoption of a resolution designing the project site as a solid waste facility and the countywide siting element of the Calaveras Integrated Waste Management Plan. May I do them all in one?
I would suggest you do them all. I would ask the board take note of two things. One, we're going to redate one of the resolutions. It has an August 19th date. It should obviously be today's date. And secondly, we will make the correction in the resolution at the right spot that it relative to 90 days of operation.
Very good.
With those two corrections, you can do all four of the remaining motions.
Then I'll do the second. I'll read all four into the record. I read the first. I'll read the second. Adopt an ordinance designing the 480-acre parcel and the 4.76-acre parcel and the 1.75-acre parcels and the 80 acres as general industrial mineral extraction. Thirdly, adopt a resolution making certain amendments to conditional use permit 96-15. Fourthly, adopt a resolution approving a certificate of acceptance requiring the recordation of a covenant restricting uses, or excuse me, restricting future uses at the project site.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded the four additional resolutions as read. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, we have none. That all passes on a 401.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bob, we have an ordinance.
Yes, it's a zoning ordinance. It doesn't take two readings.
No, I know. But we did all resolutions. We didn't do an ordinance.
The third one says states the third motion was adopt the ordinance, designated as zoning.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
About here.
So this is what they're doing now. They're doing
This is existing.
Right.
Right, so you're right, what we're doing now. And they've done a little of both. I mean, I haven't been paying attention over the years.
Okay, if we can continue with the completion of the meeting, we have under item 13, review of correspondence, reports, and various matters of concern for the Board of Supervisors. Starting with Ms. Callaway, do you have anything to report?
I absolutely have something to report. Today is 88 years that women have had the right to vote under the 19th Amendment. So I think it's...
How do you like it so far?
Big mistake.
I know it. You know, they're jealous. The women tried to amend the 15th Amendment, which was ratified in 1870, and of course, one based on sex was ratified in 1920. The 15th Amendment, do any of you know what the 15th Amendment is?
I'm sure we're going to learn.
Yes, you are.
That must have given men the right to vote.
No, it was prohibiting the vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude, which meant slavery. They would not amend it to allow women to have the right to vote. So considering we're in the middle of a convention time and we're getting to election time, I encourage all the women to get out there and vote. So we have the right, and it will not be abridged, and it's enforced by Congress. So I thought I should share that with my button saying dissent is patriotic, because that's what the women were going through when they got us the right to vote.
They're still whining.
And, okay, so based on that, I'm going to a women's right to vote dinner tonight. I have Fish and Game Commission this week. I have a jail meeting, a Juvenile Justice Commission meeting. There's the logging jamboree up in White Pines this weekend. And that's it for board appointed. Except for my dinner tonight. And because of the 19th...
Where's the dinner, Marita?
And it's in your district, Tom, which I thought was appropriate.
I think that's
since you
appropriate,
have a wife and 2 daughters who are feminists. So I thought it was appropriate that we have dinner in Supervisor Tryon's district.
Mr. Supervisor.
So that's my editorial comment.
Supervisor Claudino, can you match that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I drifted off to sleep. I'm sorry. I don't have anything to report with the exception of there's a Daphne Street Bikeway meeting at 6 o'clock Wednesday evening at the Vets Hall in Valley Springs.
Okay. Supervisor Tryon?
I have a couple items for the board. First, I did attend the RCRC meeting in Sacramento last week. It was not, in my opinion, particularly eventful. A lot of discussion on the state budget, but there doesn't seem to be much happening. During the meeting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the governor released his proposed revisions on the budget. The one good thing in there was he did recommend the inclusion of the COPS money, the $500,000 less 10%. So it would be a net of $450,000 to the county. Whether any of that stays in a budget of resolution at the state level, I don't know. The sense was that the talks they're having are not fruitful. This thing probably will go on for a considerable period of time. The consensus there was that this is the last week to put anything on the ballot. And if you looked at the governor's recommendations last week, he had several items that needed to be placed on the ballot to provide funding for his proposed budget resolution, one of which was a securitization of the state lottery. So either the deadline is passed or this week is the final deadline. There's sort of an argument going forward. There I did ask, in order to I guess, put more pressure on the state legislature, that the governor did ask the controller to pay all state employees, I think with some exceptions, the minimum wage, and the state controller refused. But I did ask the question, well, when does the state basically run out of money to the point where the state controller does not have the ability to continue paying? And I was told, I believe the answer was somewhere around 30 days. So there's still some period of time that the state has funding to pay state employees. Other than that, we talked a little bit about some of the bills that are introduced, et cetera, but they're all very premature, and I don't think there's any reason to...
Well, there's the one for the that's being heard this week the state responsibility area, and that we're not supposed to approve tentative maps or parcel maps for, I don't know where that's going to go. That's
I don't know
being
where
heard
that's
this
going
week.
to go either. All I know is we talked about quite a few that would have impacts, but they're so premature at this point, and both CSAC and RCRC are taking positions on them.
Unopposed,
We'll just sort of see where they go. The other issue I have is I attended the Planning Commission meeting last Thursday on a request for the owner of the Murphy's Hotel in Murphy's to put up a new sign in the county right-of-way. The county has an ordinance that forbids signs in the county right-of-way. The Planning Commission said that, well, it's a neon sign, so I think it's going to probably produce some degree of controversy if it goes forward. The Planning Commission approved it going forward. Basically, what they're proposing to do is take down an old tree that's in front of the hotel that has an old wooden sign in it that basically says Murphy's Hotel, and replace it with a neon cocktail sign that apparently was on the building, as I understand it, sometime in the 1940s. So the Planning Commission basically said that they felt that was an historical exemption. I would like the board to have the Planning Commission, have the board as a whole, I guess, I don't know if appeal is the right word, but bring that issue back to the Board of Supervisors to resolve, because that's going to have hugely significant implications on all of our historical districts, and it doesn't have to be an historical district, it can just be any district if, in fact, we're going to allow neon signs to be placed in the historical district. So that's my request to the board, and I'd ask the board to be pulled on that. Public Works, I believe, also would like it to come, because one of the conditions that was placed on the approval by the Planning Commission was to get an encroachment permit from Public Works. Public Works, I don't think, is very happy about issuing an encroachment permit, and I think we should just instruct the staff to, or the board as a whole, and I don't know if appeal is the right word, but the board as a whole to not let the Planning Commission decision stand without it coming to the board and having the board basically be the final body to resolve that issue, because that, I think, is an extremely significant issue if we're going to set a precedent to do that.
Well, I guess I would support that for a couple of reasons. One, McCollum Hill has just formed their historic
committee to make recommendations.
To set up sort of like a design criteria for the historic area, and this would fit in it. I don't know the details of the case, but I think we have a number of historic communities that have signs in county right-of-ways, and I just sort of know what I read in the paper, so I would support bringing this to the board because, yes, it could have an impact on all our historic areas.
Polling the board, Supervisor Claudino.
I don't mind. I am a little fuzzy on the procedure. I mean, I don't mind it coming to the board, but is this like an appeal of the plan?
There'll be a background report by planning, and
No, I mean, as far as the protocol here, is this like an appeal?
This was.
Well, I don't know how the county council wants to do it, and I would look.
Well, since this is not on the agenda, I assume that this will just be direction to staff to review where it is and exactly how to bring it to the board.
Okay.
Right. And if the board has to take an additional action, I think it's 15 days from last Thursday that the board has a right to hear it. So maybe you can just figure out how you do that, and if it needs to come back to the board, agendize it for next week. And if it doesn't need to come back to the board, just take care of it ministerially and get it agendized at some future board meeting. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay. I'm more in support of the process that has been already implemented. It was an application to the Planning Commission, and they approved it. Supervisor Tryon, as I understand, filed an appeal on that decision. It was brought back and reheard. Last week's meeting, the Planning Commission overruled Supervisor Tryon's appeal. I'm not sure that, I mean, this to me, if it can be conclusively shown that it was a sign that was there in the 40s, I'm not sure why we're beating this thing to death. As far as you've represented this as a removal of a tree, but the tree is dying. It has to come down.
Well, we have a program in Murphy's that the board adopted, which basically said when we remove trees, we will plant trees. So the question becomes then, if you're going to remove a tree, is it the same thing as planting a tree to put in a metal pole with a neon sign on top of it rather than planting a tree? Secondly, the question is, if a sign was there in the 1940s, does that make it an historical non-conforming use for a sign rather than the sign that is currently there that is being replaced? So I think there are some pretty considerable policy issues that the board, I think, should address.
Okay, well, as I see it, there are 3 supervisors here that want the county council to research the methodology for bringing this back to have the supervisors review it. I am not in favor of it. So that's the polling.
Okay. So it's 3-1?
Yeah, 3-1. Okay, I have nothing of earth-shaking consequence to report, except that there will be a Copperopolis Community Plan Advisory Committee meeting on Thursday night, the 28th, at the Firehouse, starting at 6:30. Let's see, and then I also will be addressing the board and the Homeowners Association at the Poker Flat Homeowners Association meeting, their annual meeting on the 30th. I may probably take a sheriff with me.
Just one?
Yeah, just maybe, as long as they're packing. Okay, do we have any reports from our Chief Administrative Officer?
Nothing other than to say that I've been looking forward all week to hearing the report from the County Council.
Which will have to be deferred for another week.
Okay, Madeline, do you have anything? Okay, this just popped into my head here, Mr. Lawton. Should we at some point, maybe today isn't the right time to do it, but we have a unfortunate scheduling problem coming up in the first week of December. The CSAC meeting and our Board of Supervisors meeting are scheduled to be on the same day.
Yeah, that would be what, December 2nd, the December 2nd meeting. If the board wished to instruct us, we could cancel that meeting. And
we usually do. Most counties do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually you agendize that, the board, so it's on the agenda.
We'll bring that back.
And most of the time we do this.
We'll bring that back.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I guess that concludes our meeting for today. Thank all of you for coming and hanging in here with us. See you next week. This meeting is adjourned.